This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 160 is brought to us by Bybit. Attention current Bybit users of mine. You have a special positional airdrop happening right now for $500 in USDT. You need to go to your portal and register, and you can choose between either an airdrop for Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, something called 1000 Pepe, Doge, Ordi, Arbitrum, Jupiter, ETH Classic, or FTM. Don't pick that one. I would post this on the blog, but this is only available for people who are already signed up. If you would like to get signed up yourself and be eligible for this, and everything Bybit does, and it's so many things, go down to the blog and click that link. My affiliate link is at the bottom of that blog, and click it and be eligible for everything that Bybit gives you for free, because with Bybit, membership definitely has its rewards. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and it just now hit me. We are 160 episodes in. That's over 3 years worth of podcast episodes. Jesus. So I'm really glad I put this episode together. It kind of needs to be done. We really haven't taken a step back from everything and just said, okay, we here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast believe in this. You know, to really kind of get everybody on the same page. We've had a lot of new people come in lately, and we've had a lot of those new people say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And I've already made a complete dedicated episode for that one thing that answers their question a lot better than I ever could just by giving you a sentence or two. So if you're new and you would like to know my thoughts on a particular crypto token, or how to buy gold as an American, you know, or anything we even remotely talk about here, I've probably covered it in depth. So the best thing to really do is go to YouTube, because all of these episodes go to YouTube. Click on my channel, and then there's a search bar inside of there, and type in your question there. Type in the topic you're interested in there. I have probably made at some point a podcast episode or an actual video about it. But compared to people who were here since the beginning and people who came in later, I don't know what that ratio is. So we really, like I said, need to take a step back and just say, look, this is what the podcast itself believes. And really, that's another way of saying what I personally believe. But, you know, like attracts like. So chances are, if you're here, then you and I both believe a lot of the same things. Now, you are more than free to disagree with me on any of these things I'm about to say. It would almost be normal to not agree with me on every single thing. But as always, I try to do my best to state my case, at least, for why it makes perfect sense to go this route. Because, again, we are contrarians, which means this is not the common route to take. So on that note, let's start off with the very first one. We believe that being contrarian is the only way to go. Why? Because your average investor gets destroyed. They have no money management. They panic sell. They don't know how to play defense. They don't protect themselves the right way. Or they play too much defense and they miss out on opportunities. You know, it doesn't have to be that way. And as a matter of fact, it shouldn't be that way. It's almost like simply doing the opposite of what these people do is going to serve you better. You know, it's not like we just blindly fade these people. That would be lazy. You know, we do things a very particular way, and we're about to talk about that. But the first thing we need to get out of the way is we do believe here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast that contrarian investing is certainly the best route to take. We believe in asymmetry. What does that mean? I define it as anything that has abnormal upside compared to your standard investment. Now, you might be saying, well, VP, then that makes a lottery ticket asymmetrical too. Well, yes, it does. But the difference between us and people who play the lottery is one very special word, and that very special word is probability. So you find things which have asymmetrical upside, and then you try to best determine the probability of those things actually happening. Now, the lower that probability is, the higher risk you're taking, but that's okay if the reward matches it. So for example, if you find a very low cap altcoin that you genuinely think has maybe a 5 or 10% chance of really becoming something viable and something that a lot of people use in the future, then this is certainly something worth investing in. It's very similar to pot odds in poker, to where, okay, this bet is not supposed to win, but if we do the math, does the potential payout equal the risk? Simple as that. Now, one of the greatest things about the asymmetrical market we invest in is we also believe you don't have to go very far up the risk curve to achieve really great asymmetry. I just told the story about, finding a really low cap token that has a 5-10%, possibility. Oh, I have not really found anything like that myself. I have found low cap tokens, but I had put their probability at lower than 5 or 10%, too low to where it was really worth it for me to invest in. We believe you can play in the blue chip pool or the almost blue chip pool, especially in a market like crypto or in mining stocks, and still get that asymmetry that you're looking for. And I've been very public on this channel telling you what I've bought. The asymmetry to me made sense when I bought Ethereum at 280. The asymmetry for me made sense when I bought energy fuels around $1. Now, a lot of things we've put our money down on here have yet to fully take shape, of course. But over time, we've also seen those things grow and mature into something that has even a much better probability than it did when we first saw it. And that is tremendously exciting. So on that note, we also believe that taking a very long-term view is the only way to play this market. We believe that trading it has a lot of upside opportunity. We believe that investing in it long-term has a lot of upside opportunity as well. The one thing you don't want to do is get caught in the middle. But to use crypto terms, HODL DCA is really the most intelligent approach. It's what rich people do. And no matter where on the income spectrum we lie, you can still do what rich people do. And you should, always. We believe that playing offense and defense are equally as important. Most people do not do both. The people who only play defense, or those people out there who get very dogmatic about one thing, whether that one thing is gold or Bitcoin, miss out on tremendous opportunities in other sectors, simply because their religion does not allow it. And then there are those out there who do nothing but play offense, and almost always end up getting wiped out or foolishly put themselves at risk for an external factor to come in and wipe them out. And you would be amazed how up and to the right your income curve can go if you simply don't take gigantic losses for no reason. So we take offense and defense very seriously here. But VP, I'm young. I don't need to be defensive. That's for old people who are retired and have already made their money. Well, under normal circumstances, you might have somewhat of a point, but we also believe that financially, the world is getting worse. And not only are we really, really overdue for a pretty bad correction, we also believe that peak prosperity for the world probably happened somewhere in the 2010s. Now you have the early to middle chapters of deglobalization. You have China not making cheap things anymore, which has a ripple effect everywhere. You have the potential downfall of China and what that's going to look like. You've had really bad and imprudent and clumsy financial management all over the world ever since 2020. And it had created and or exacerbated so many financial problems in the world, and we have done absolutely nothing to remedy any of those problems except for one, and that one thing was inflation. And this is a future episode, but there is no guarantee that inflation will not come roaring back at some point. You can say what you want about the state of the world overall. We can debate that all day, but financially, it's pretty clear to see that we have a lot of things going on right now that have never happened before, at least not at this scale. And when you have known nothing but prosperity your entire life, it's hard to wrap your head around a possible future world where things are no longer that way. Again, you have to determine what the probability is here. And then you have to determine if that probability is high enough to take the proper defensive action. That's your call. But we here believe that it is. And what's really great about playing defense and being a contrarian investor is you can also get a lot of offense out of your defense. I've been talking about buying gold on my channel since it was $1,600 an ounce, and silver since it was $12 an ounce, and Bitcoin since it was $8,600. All to me are really great defensive plays. And the big event or series of events that you would play defense for hasn't even happened yet. And we've all seen tremendous upside in our gold, silver, and Bitcoin holdings. In contrarian land, our offense gives us offense, and even our defense gives us offense. If you buy things when they are cheap and you have the patience to wait it out, it then becomes heads you win, tails you win more. It's a great place to be. So along those lines, we believe that precious metals are the way. They have always been the way. No matter what technology gets thrown at it, it always endures, it always protects, and like we said, as a bonus, it also gives you upside. And every single human being should own gold in some capacity. And now, whether you have $2 to invest in or $2 million to invest in, you can still own gold. There are many ways to do it. We've covered it here. And we feel the same about silver, even though there is one less way. There's not really a viable way on the blockchain to do that just yet. They do exist, but none that have really come to the forefront to where it's big enough and been around long enough for people to really be able to trust it. But that's fine. You can still buy it on the paper market for however much you want to spend. Now, if you want to play pure offense with precious metals via mining stocks, you can. We do here. But it is certainly not necessary. Completely optional. We believe that there will come a day where energy will come at an absolute premium. In many ways, this is already happening. But for the electrification and for the future that we envision and for the growth we will need and for the population that even though the birth rate is declining, the population itself is still rising and will for at least another 20, 30 years. There are only so many energy molecules out there to be had. And that number overall is going down while demand is rising. And this can serve as a great offensive and defensive hedge to any portfolio. And this is not something anybody should be sleeping on. I envision a future where energy dominates the financial news cycles. And all types of energy, from coal to oil to natural gas to uranium to renewables. There will be a seat at the table for all of those. And although the timing here is a lot more difficult than other sectors we pay attention to, if you can find ways to get in cheap and you have the patience to ride it out, it can and will probably be, there's probability again, will probably be very much worth it. Energy is life. Everybody needs it. Everybody will continue to need it. They will continue to need more of it, therefore making energy one of the most probable bets on the board. We believe that Bitcoin has become one of, if not the most important inventions of our time. We could go on and on about the way it possibly fixes humanity, and at the very least can fix our financial system. And maybe it won't become the payment rails that people thought it was going to become 5 years ago, and maybe it won't be the blockchain to end all blockchains, but it doesn't have to be. More and more every day it is being accepted as money, and it is the only money in the world with a fixed supply. Again, we go back to asymmetry. Is the asymmetry there? Yes. Is the probability there? Absolutely. And it's growing more and more every day. And even large American institutions can't deny it anymore. They certainly pretended to, but now they can't even do that. As we mentioned before, as asymmetrical as Bitcoin is, it still has a lot of defensive qualities as well. It really is the best of everything, and to me is probably the one asset that really, really embodies what we do here. Now that might sound like a maxi talking, but you guys know I am no maxi because we also believe that blockchain is the future of payments and the future of computing, and should be looked at the same way tech was looked at in the early 2000s. On the payment side, it's pretty obvious. Large banks and governments have also seen the future here, and they understand this is where the puck is going, and they want to be on board because, even more importantly, they don't want to be the one entity who is not on board while their competition is. And if you weren't a believer in this before, like I said, just look at what the institutions are doing. They're not rich because they're stupid. If you think all of them are wrong and you're right, then that's fine. You're allowed to think that. But I know better. And on the computing side, it's an even better time to be alive right now because we've gotten past that first generation. If you look back at the internet, for example, the first generation, you had things like AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy, Netscape. And it's that whole saying, pioneers get slaughtered, settlers prosper. So you did away with all those. But then what came in the next generation? You had Microsoft, Yahoo, Cisco, Oracle, and then a couple years later, Google. All things that are being used a lot right now. And to turn a blind eye to this for no other reason but the fact that we drank a gallon of the Goldbug Kool-Aid or the Bitcoin Kool-Aid, it's silly. It's absurd to think that both things cannot prosper. Both things are likely to prosper. And in terms of actual upside, there is more here than there is almost anywhere. Many of us have already seen it. Many of us have already experienced it. And this game is only beginning. If we niche down a bit, we also believe that Web 3 is the future of gaming. And gaming, as most of us know, is a really, really big sector. There might come a day where children ask their parents, why did you play video games and not get paid for it? Now, I think there's a world where Web 2 games and Web 3 games coexist. But to say that the new technology of Web 3 has no chance and will get eaten by the old technology of Web 2, to me, makes absolutely no sense. And just like we said before in my internet comparison, are we still in that first generation, or have we already gotten past that first generation and moved into the second? That question has yet to be answered. But if you understand how big this space is, and the probability of Web 3 taking up a significant amount of that space over time, you probably understand that the asymmetry right now is at least there. And growing up, we didn't have hardly any chance to get in early to really large sectors with bright futures. These opportunities either just didn't exist, or we were young and we didn't have the money to put down. But now it's here, and now we do. It's a tremendous time to be alive. I will not let these opportunities pass me by. If I fail, I fail. I expect to fail. Failing is a large part of the game. But when you do the math, the asymmetrical upside makes it all worth it. Pivoting now, we believe that saving, in many ways, is every bit as important as investing. And by this, I mean spending less money than you do now on things you really don't need, or simple changes you can make that put more money in your pocket by doing what you're already doing. Why? Because unlike contrarian investing, these things are instant. You get this money right away. And you can use this money either to get yourself out of debt, which is the very first thing you should do, or to put into contrarian investments. We all wish we had more to invest. And this is a very quick and easy way to get there. And pivoting even more, we also believe that no matter where you have your money, whether it's in a bank or gold or crypto, that you do need a bank, and simply having one bank is foolish. I could not imagine a world where I work so hard to make the money I make, only to have an external factor take it away from me. But again, most people in the Western world have had it so good for so long, you cannot convince them to even take the slightest bit of action here. They, at some point, will have to learn the hard way. And based on what we're seeing in the world financially, we're not doomers here, but we understand the probability of something happening, is much higher than it was before. Now, what does much higher even mean? Was it at 0.1% before, and now it's at 4%? That's still pretty low. But, think of it this way. You have a big vertical, like Wheel of Fortune wheel, all right? And you get one spin, and there are 100 spaces on that wheel. 96 green ones, 4 red ones. You get one spin. And if you land on a green, you're fine. If you land on a red, the money you have in your bank gets completely wiped out. How confident at this point do you really feel? And what steps would you take to remove 2 or 3 or all 4 of those red spaces off of your wheel before you spin it? Contrarians do not allow one bank, a bank that likely has not stewarded your money very well, or one jurisdiction, which, as we have seen in the past 5 years, can be quite unpredictable and do some pretty oppressive things out of nowhere, depending on how they feel about you. Do not ever put yourself at full risk to things like that. Do whatever you have to do to take this threat away, because it's already happening to a lot of people. People who did everything right up until one point, but at that point had all their money in one place, and now it's either gone or in serious jeopardy. Well, VP, in today's world, large banks just mop up all the insolvent banks. Well, if a big bank absorbs 40 insolvent banks, you know what that ends up creating? One big insolvent bank. It's not some panacea. And again, what happens when those scales finally tip the other way? We don't know. But why would you leave something like this to chance? You don't need to take the added risk of putting a lot of money in a bank you're not comfortable with. But you need to have that tunnel open. Because as we've seen with every bank run in history, whether it's been manual or online, you have a lot of people all at once trying to escape out of a very narrow door. This is not where I would want to be. Now, if you're new, this is a lot to take in, but have no fear. We have 160 podcast episodes, along with a lot of my YouTube videos that have covered many of these things in depth. Take your time, run a search, get the information you need. And in the meantime, we here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast will keep right on chugging along, because what we absolutely believe is that we're not crazy. We're just early.